Lizette, got it.
Goed en jy?
We're going to keep to English if that's okay.
100%.
Nice to have you on the show. I don't want to butcher the intro, so I think it's best that you do maybe just a quick introduction to who you are and what you do.
Excellent. Well, I'm Lizette Volkwyn. I'm a master life coach, master NLP practitioner, published author, and obviously my claim to fame, I'm a master human lie detector.
And we've seen that in real time. We've seen that live on video calls, in person. You don't have to be in front of someone to pick up that they're not telling the truth. We did that masterclass last week Friday. Team loved it. And you summed up Gilbert within 5 seconds perfectly. I literally thought someone shared the information with you before the call.
Well, it happens so naturally. So when you said I was spot on, I was like, really? I mean, it's just natural. That's what I do. Yeah. It's not like a phenomenon, but yeah, that's what you pick up when you start knowing what to read.
I literally thought someone gave you a summary of Gilbert, and then I realized that's not possible, and that's when I started laughing, and I was like, that's incredible. Even him was like, he's probably glad that you're not his wife, because he's not going to get away with anything. Thanks for being on the show. I really want to chat a little bit about, you big into personal development, you big into self-discovery. We've had some sessions as well. I thought it would be great to bring you onto the show and maybe talk a little bit about business owners and what they can do to self-discover themselves and also improve themselves. Because what I realized in my journey was that I had to fix myself first before everything else around me started to fall into place. And that goes for everything in life, not just business, but whether it's a career that you're building, whether it's a partnership, spouse, girlfriend, whatever it may be, you have to fix yourself and you have to work on yourself. So the title I really had in mind for this episode is just fix yourself before you fix your business.
And that is so true. Our biggest challenge, and even myself, that is where I started off as an absolute entrepreneur, and I've been in corporate as well. I realized the only time I really saw results was when I started owning who I am. And I felt comfortable in my skin. And I realized I cannot be somebody else. And if somebody doesn't resonate with me, that's okay. Because everybody is their own person in their own way. And if you start presenting that authenticity, people relate to you much easier. And they tend to feel more comfortable around you to do business with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think so many business owners, there's a difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur. And we've had this conversation many times. But if you are going to be someone who starts a business, I don't think we always understand and we underestimate how much of yourself that is going to take. So when you do start a business, that whole business for the first 3 or 4 years is a 100% reflection of you.
That's a big challenge. And I'm going to challenge you on that. Because we tend to say, when clients come to see me, especially entrepreneurs and business owners, when they go and say, this company is my baby, then the first thing I say is, hold on, it's not your baby. It's a business. It's a means to a way of making money, feeling comfortable and achieving something.
Expressing yourself.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's not you. And the moment you can, and even for me, I'm very attached to the brand Lizette Volkwyn. I'm very attached to what I do and where I go and see clients, where I do corporates, where I do keynote speaking. Whatever I do, I get very involved with it. But I had to learn to detach my emotions as person from that. Because the only way we can do that is when I realize I'm me. I'm Lizette Volkwyn. I do speak fast. I'm very passionate. I'm very energetic. I love what I do. And for some people, they don't like that type of energy and what they would like to take life a little bit slower. And I had to accept that flaw of mine to present to who I am. So the people who I resonate with really get the value of Lizette and not what I think they want or how to adjust to make it work. Because just like you said, right at the beginning, we wear all the hats. Jack of all trades, the cleaner. I set up the whole technical side. Then I learned this and I have to do that because I only have that budget. And I have a picture which not a lot of people don't see. And I need to realize that. And the moment we see that, we lose ourselves. But if I'm grounded in who I am from the start, the business becomes an own identity and not my identity.
Yeah, I think I don't even know where to start because I want to go in so many directions, to be honest with you. So I'm sitting here going, where do I start to make sure that we curate this the best for the audience? But at the end of the day, I'm just going to follow, my own excitement and curiosity. And I think it starts with the fact that we've worked with over 400 businesses now since 2018. And during this time, because we've worked with so many of them, we can start to see patterns in what businesses will succeed because of the founder that's behind the business.
Yes.
And the ones who succeed, the business owner is, in a way, grounded. They are open-minded. They are not insecure. They're not emotionally triggered. They more logically driven in terms of emotion when it comes to decision-making. They're rational. It's literally, we're thinking about including a personality test before you sign on with V8 Media so that we can actually start to see how much, personal growth have you done and what red flags there is along the way. Because we almost want to just work with more of those people because it's just easy to work with them. Then you get businesses who fall apart or, there's issues within the individual themselves, and those issues manifest within the business, and that comes from insecurities, anxieties. This is how my brand looks, this is how it needs to be, and if it's not exactly like that, you're damaging the whole brand. 1,000 people saw it. Yeah, 1,000 people saw it for 1 second and probably forgot about it out of the 50 million in South Africa. And, you get people who are just so overly romantic about their businesses, and at the same time latching onto that, they almost solving their own insecurities by having those businesses. So I don't really know where we want to start, but I almost want to highlight the biggest, maybe not mistakes really, but the common denominators of not bad business owners. That's a bad way of phrasing it, but for lack of better words, the people who are going to struggle and create more friction for themselves. What patterns can we foresee, and how can people maybe go about working on those, issues at the end of the day?
And that is so true. The key word being pattern. I'm a very big fan of patterns. When people ask me, how do I change this? Then my first question is, what's your pattern? Because we need to break the pattern. So if there's such a great saying that says, nothing changes if nothing changes. And if you do not realize something's not working for you, you have to be open-minded and grounded enough to say, let me change the way I look at it. And the biggest pitfall for most toxic businesses and toxic entrepreneurs, and I use the word toxic because the moment I'm insecure, I project my insecurity. So I perceive that everybody hates me, everybody's trying to show that I don't know what I'm doing, and I believe that everybody's trying to make money out of me and I'm not making money. So the more I project that, the less I'm going to be successful because I'm playing the blame shift. Secondly, every time I work with people, I will always work with people that I feel in my mind is weaker than what I am, or is they are really putting me on a pedestal, and that's okay. I will never ever have the confidence to go and speak to a huge corporate or a CEO of a massive company because I'm going to feel inferior towards them. But when I'm grounded and I know who I am, I can take my business, whether it's a small business or a large concern, to anybody and feel comfortable and proud of it.
Yeah, and I just thought of a few personalities that I've, crossed paths with over the last few years, and some of them have that insecurity where they would only want to work or hire people who most likely know less than them because it's their own insecurity standing in the way of getting involved with people who actually know more than you. And I think the one thing about a leader is to be grounded. And I think anybody who runs a business should be a leader automatically. You're not going to be able to grow and scale a business if you don't act like a leader. And the biggest issue with most leaders is that they're scared of losing the limelight, or someone else outshining them, and they look like incompetent. Because when you're the person who is steering the ship, there's a lot of pressure and I would say attention on you to make the right decisions. And the moment you make the wrong decision, you feel like, your own insecurities can amplify the pain that you feel and the triggers and the emotional triggers that you have. So I've seen people hire people that are C players, D players, purely because that makes them feel better about themselves. But then at the same time, they're stuck with their business because they can't delegate properly. They don't have people who take initiative. They don't have people who can actually take charge and solve problems on their behalf and help them build a better business for everybody involved. So I resonate with that so much, with the insecurities. But where does one start? There's a lot of people who have a lot of issues and they're probably aware of it, but they don't know where to start on how to solve it. What is the first step in really becoming, I'd say, a better business owner, entrepreneur, leader at the end of the day?
I think, as you know, I'm an advocate for authenticity and who you are, and that's my job. I literally teach people how to embrace who they are and then take that to market. And as an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. For the few years I've been in corporate, I know what it's like to wake up and how am I going to pay the bills by the end of the month? How am I going to support everybody who is working for me, who's dedicating hours to me? And it starts playing with your mind and you want to get involved with that. And you're going to say, there's something wrong with me. I'm letting people down. And we have to start with that first step and say, let's spark all those emotions. If you plan to start a business, first go to self-discovery. But if you're already in the business and you know there's room for improvement, which a lot of companies have, you have to start saying that, let me buy out some time. And also, obviously, that's where I started with my 8-hour workshop to say, we don't have a year to rediscover who I am or redesign my life. So that's why I've compacted it. And in 8 hours, you can change it. But you have to start where you are right now and start being honest with yourself. Every one of us have baggage because we are born from parents which didn't know how to get us grown-ups. They don't know that we shouldn't say, we bump into a table when we're small. And the first thing a parent does is go, stupid table. So what do we do from 2 years old upwards? We are taught, blame somebody. So automatically, all these little baggages, we grow up with that. And it becomes part of us. But the biggest mistake, what we do, we don't realize it's not us. It doesn't define who we are. And the moment you can take that moment of honesty and say, what's my baggage? What am I afraid of? What's the worst that can be? Those are the few answers. And you can jot them down. And you start saying, okay, but what am I going to do about it? Then you're going to start feeling, hang on, it's not just me feeling insecure. It's not just me that's afraid of how am I going to pay the bills or how are we going to be successful? How are people going to perceive my company if I become more human? I wrote a book last year on triumphing vulnerability. And one of my biggest challenges was that I wouldn't show anybody my vulnerability. I would rather shoot 1 minute video the whole day, and in my mind it's perfect, before I will post it. And then I realized, but if you can't be human, you can't grow. And that's what you have to start doing. Go and be honest about who you are.
So the first step is be human and look at who you are right now. Do an audit on yourself.
I love that word. Absolutely. And it's difficult because we are so bombarded with social media, what we think people expect. And in our minds, we have our own mentor or idol on a pedestal. We don't see him swimming underneath the water. We think he's just gliding and being a success. So we've got that picture and we don't want to do that audit and say, well, he's going to think I'm weak if I'm not like him or like her. And that's our biggest challenge.
How would you start auditing yourself? You need a sense of self-awareness, but what if you're not self-aware enough to really do the audit to a healthy degree?
Well, I'm going to share my story, and I think it's one of the first times ever I'm going to share it, is that I got married when I was 19. I had 3 children at a very early age. At the age of about 29, I thought, what am I doing? I've got these 3 little kids, And what happened with my life? I never had a youth, etc. And then I still pushed through because I've got a personality of, I keep on going no matter what. And then here around my 39, 40 years old, I literally closed the door one morning on my kids when they were, husband left, he's being successful at work. The kids, my son at that point in time was the head boy in the primary school. Everything was great. And even in sales, I worked so hard to prove to people that I'm not the girl that we was brought up by an alcoholic, been in 13 primary schools. We were very poor. And I don't want people to know this. I worked so hard being an imposter that nobody should know that I actually live in the East Rand. Nobody should know that I like a lot of Coke and Smarties or whatever. I would rather find out what other people want to know. But that morning, I closed the door and something just broke in me. I suddenly felt like nothing. I realized I cannot continue being this imposter. I don't know what's next. And then you Google, how do I become the very best I can be? And what did I do? Go look in the mirror, hit yourself on the bum and say, I'm sexy and I know it. It doesn't work. And then I started with this journey of how do I discover who I truly am? And then you realize, but I can put down these characteristics, but do I really believe them? And then I realize I like the characteristics, but I cannot own them in boardrooms. It takes a lot out of me to do that. The time I get home, I shake because I think, I hope they didn't see that I was nervous. The truth is, all of us are nervous
all the time
because that keeps us on our toes. But then you go on your list, I call it the gremlin list, which you have to go and sit down and say, what happened in my life that I don't like people to know, or that nobody knows about me because in my perspective, I feel guilty about. And when you start looking at those pointers, you start looking at them from a point of view of today, and you think about, is it still relevant? Or how strong was I to handle that at that point in time? Then you realize, but suddenly my dad's alcoholism, which I thought was isolated, I realized there's such a huge amount of individuals that grew up in houses with alcoholism. It's not a pat on the back. It's not a chip on the shoulder saying, poor pitiful me. And I can talk about it because that didn't define who I am. So when you go through that list and you start eliminating that poor pitiful me mindset, the victim mentality. And the moment you change that and you can look at it hard and you can say, well, I do speak too fast. Maybe I speak too fast because I'm afraid people are not going to hear me, or they're not going to give me a chance to speak fully or hear me what I want to say to them. Or I don't like to be socialized. And I always felt there was something wrong with me because I'm not socially comfortable. But it's my personality. I'm an ambivert. I'm a huge introvert, and then I love being on stage, being the extrovert.
Same.
And if you understand that and you start embracing that, that's where you start growing and feeling grounded.
Yeah, so as part of this audit and gremlin list that you speak of, right, what I can think of is there's a sense of ego that can obviously make this a lot more painful than it needs to be. And you were saying that you get home and you're shaking, wondering, could people see that you're stressed? And one thing I always say is, like, we're all just trying to figure this life out.
Yeah.
Everybody pretends like they have their shit together, but essentially that's not a true reflection of reality. And we taught to believe that because we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we read the news, and you look at idols, and it always seems like everybody's got their lives figured out. But when you start to put them under a microscope, then you realize everybody is just on the same path, and that's figuring out what this is.
Exactly. And I'm going back again to Triumph and Vulnerability last year. I made very sure that I look in control because I coach people when their life is in a mess, and I bring them back to having control in life. And suddenly I realized, and I said, I cannot sing to save my life. And I got Steffi Bartman, who taught me how to sing, one song on stage. We done it last year, the 19th of August. There's a whole documentary on it, where I had to go through the pains of going on stage, singing the climb of Miley Cyrus in front of 150 people, technically correct, which I managed to do. But the hardship and the pains I had to went through to get to that point made me realize it was worth it. Because when we go through the pains of letting the ego go, because I look in control and suddenly I just burst out in tears and say, let's just cut this. I'm not going to do this anymore. You know, when we go through life, we need to go to the point where we say, put the ego aside. If you don't like what you are seeing right now, then you're not my tribe. I'm lost right now, and that's okay. I cannot sing. I cannot get it right. Teach me. And if you can get to that, eliminating the ego, parking your emotions, you will find you will grow exponentially, because the people around you are going to start feeling your energy, that you are comfortable, and you're going to make them comfortable. They're going to open up to you and give you more business.
You know what's weird is that, speaking about the ego, we had a conversation earlier, and I said my life changed when I realized I know nothing.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I had a chip on my shoulder when I was younger. Like I always thought, I'll figure this out myself. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. And in 2020, we didn't grow. Luckily, we didn't go backwards. We didn't grow at all as a company. And my biggest fear is being the same version of myself 12 months later. That's really my biggest fear in a way. It's like being the exact same version of Jandre 12 months later. That's a huge fear. And I think in COVID, it kind of felt that way, because there wasn't a lot of time to self-reflect.
Yes.
Well, even though there was, we escaped doing other things.
Correct.
And, you know, you were just constantly stressing about business. That was the escape of really doing an audit on yourself. And in 2020, I decided, you know, F this, I'm just going to get a mentor. And I spent $10,000 hiring a mentor. And the next year, that was at the end of 2020, 2021, we went from 3 million to 9 million. And then I truly understood the power of putting your ego aside. And it's funny, like, since then, I'm happy to not be the smartest in the room. I'm happy to not be the most confident. It's weird. Like, I'm so happy that happened to me. But a lot of people don't have that epiphany moment when they're realizing that. Like, it's almost like something traumatic has to happen for you to realize you are the problem. Because when life is kind of like a mediocre, okay, when it's not too painful, but not too, when you're not too successful, but not not too bad either.
That comfort zone.
There's a comfort zone, and I think that comfort zone prevents us from really forcing ourselves to do an audit. So, talking about the ego, I mean, is there practical steps to follow on how to let it go? Like how do we shed these insecurities? How do we shed these issues that we are carrying around that's not only manifesting in our lives, but especially in our businesses, and which is also hindering us from actually growing and helping more people?
You know, our biggest challenge, and I'm going to go back again because I want to say ego equals emotions. Our biggest challenge, what happens is, as entrepreneurs, we get an idea in our head. You know what? There's a void in the market. This is what I'm going to do from tomorrow onwards. Or I'm going to start to do a bit of research. And now I'm going to start a business with me, myself, and I. And then the business grows a little bit. And then I add one person just to help me with the admin. And before you know it, I add someone for sales. And then I add, well, now I can't do the technical. Now I'm getting someone for the technical. And before you know it, you've got 10 or 15 people working for you. And you feel like a little god because you've created this world where you actually give support to these people and you're feeding mouths. And that's the first problem. Now we've got this ego. I'm so great, I've created this. But in the problems, we've created that from a point of fear to fail and making it a point of, to the extent of, I used to work for this company, they asked me to leave, or I never could work well with this manager, and I'm going to prove to him that I'm successful. Wrong point of view. You started with the wrong starting blocks, but it's never too late to change the blocks. And the moment you realize that, you have to take the ego and put it aside. You know, and it's difficult because in society, people want to know how much money have you made, how good are your company, how you are featuring against the competitors, etc. And that is our biggest problem. Comparison is a killer. And the moment you want to start looking and doing this audit, take yourself out of the whole equation. Say to yourself, I'm taking ego out of this. Nobody's going to know what you're going to say next. So while you're doing the audit, nobody's going to know you're doing the audit. But take the ego aside. And then you're going to go and say, like, I'm not going to compare myself either. Because what do? We compare ourselves with other life coaches. You know, the first thing we do, we go and say, oh, they've got their own TV program. Oh, my word, they're on these magazines. Oh, my word, they did this. Let them be, because that's who they are. So go back and say, what's my audit? Don't compare. Park the emotions and park the ego. And then have a look at it. If you don't like what you see, be grounded enough or honest enough to say, who am I going to find to help me through these points? Because if you do that, you elevate. It's exactly what you said. You know, you think you're going to do it because we are Mrs. Independence. You know, I'm not going to ask anybody because I don't want people to think that I don't know. Pride. And the moment you go and say, well, I don't know much. I mean, we had the conversation this morning. And I said, I thought I knew everything. And I thought I've learned everything. I've got the content. I've got what I need to do. But I know I'm missing a golden thread. And somewhere along the line, you have to put up your hand and say, I'm missing the golden thread. And if you do that, you do it with somebody you trust. That's why it's so important. The circle you mingle with, that's who you're going to become. So if you're going to mingle yourself with people who are less informed than you, where are you going to grow to? You're going to have that golden thread being just a black thread at the end, because that thread is not going to give you anything to grow or to challenge.
Yeah, I think you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Absolutely.
And who do you spend your time with as a business owner? You spend it with people who most people probably hired through their own insecurities, who might be not on the level that they want them to be because they don't want to take the shine away from them being the business owner. So you are immediately associating yourselves with people who might know a little bit less. And then, I mean, you go home to your wife and your kids, and who in some way, shape or form might not be always filling that career-driven mindset, entrepreneurial mindset, because that's a different side of you, right? So it's not, so they don't really, it's almost like I look at it as like, there are families who are all entrepreneurial and all want to build a business together, and that's very cool. But I think most people find themselves where, you know, their spouse does one thing and they do one thing, and they've got their passions and hobbies, and you've got your, both people are independent. So when you go, you elevating maybe yourself, but not maybe on a career level as much, but it's more on a personal side of things. So you spend time with your family, who's more of a personal development thing, not so much a career-driven thing.
Correct.
And then when you go to work, you're spending time with people who probably are not always on the level where you would ideally want them to be either. That's if you are someone who's hired people out of insecurity. And the moment I changed my perspective to let me pay to get into the room of some of the smartest people, let me actually pay for someone's time to teach me or share perspectives with me, because I believe all advice is bad advice. I like to understand how you came to the advice. What, as I said to you earlier as well, is don't listen to the plan. Forget about the plan. I will give you a plan, but understand how I got to the plan.
Yes.
That's more important. Because when you start to think like that, you can take that level of thinking and apply it to every single other thing in your life. And I think a lot of business owners don't have enough people around them that thinks on an elevated level. So that's one thing. I wanted to highlight the pain of it, because from my point of view, a lot of people are avoiding the pain of that self-discovery, because self-discovery equals a little bit of pain, because you're touching on the ego. What is if someone is not ready to dive into that pain, or they're ignorant to it, like, is there a certain practical way to go about it? Or is it just something that you say to them, well, it's not your time? Maybe it's not the right time to self-discover, because when the time comes, you'll be ready.
Sure. That is a very difficult answer. I'm going to tell you why.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, so many people avoid the pain because they don't feel comfortable with it. And then they miss out on the opportunity of growth.
And the reason for that is the ego. Because what happens is we want to think And we procrastinate with so much of busy in the business itself as an entrepreneur, running a business, etc. We procrastinate by, oh, I need to answer my emails. It's very important to have that image of giving you the service. But we never take out the time and say, you know what, I'm going to spend an hour a week or 2 hours a week and say, I deserve more. And that is our biggest weakness. We are not taught to say, look at yourself first and move forward. You cannot serve with an empty cup. And if you can change that mindset of saying, you know what, I'm not ready yet. Because I absolutely believe at the right time in your life, you will go down and say, if you don't choose it now, life is going to get you to a point and say, it's time. And you have two choices. You can wait for that moment when life says, it's time to do that audit, or you can do the audit now and prevent that moment in time where life says, now I'm giving you the illness, or now I'm giving you the bankruptcy, or I'm taking away clients which you thought will define you. And the moment you understand clients, business, people do not define me. They can bring value to me, but they cannot make me who I am.
Wow, that's so powerful what you said, because I think that's exactly why I do what I do. I don't want to go through the pain.
Yes.
So I'm happy to put my ego aside and learn what I need to learn so that I can avoid that super intense moment when you're realizing, shit.
And, I see it so many times in my rooms, where people come and they literally the first hour, they just cry. And they go, my whole life is falling apart. I'm feeling emotional. The business, I can't focus anymore. It's as if the whole market has changed and I don't have that anymore. And if they listened to themselves years ago, the picture would have looked different, because your decision making is impacted. The way you interact with your family is impacted. The way I run my business and work with my colleagues is impacted. And even the people I align with business and take my business to the next level is different with when you are insecure and when you are secure.
So true. I think I realized that if I really want to make a difference, I have to get better.
Fact.
And I think so many people are trying to make a difference, but they're not improving themselves.
Yep.
And that's why it becomes painful, because you're not making the difference you want to make, but you're also not doing the self-reflection to realize that you're the problem.
And there's a bigger problem. I have a mantra and I live by that mantra. All you have to be is 1% better than what you were yesterday. And even if it means that you've going through depression and you're in bed today, but you get out of bed tomorrow and you make a cup of coffee at least, that's a lot of improvement. And if you can put that aside, like you say, don't go and say, yeah, but I'm too busy now. I've got this all going for me. Rather take that one step back and say, what if I spent an hour or 8 hours going through the self-development of what I need to know who I am and move forward? That's a lot less than being booked off for 6 weeks because your health couldn't take it anymore. Or had to regroup your whole business because your ego was so big that a sales guy told you to change a client or doing something and you didn't want to listen, and you're losing the business. That's why it's so important to say, let me take this moment and say, do I like this person? We are so afraid we're not going to like this person that we just want to move away. But we forget there's a little mini me inside here that's been asking and saying, pick me, pick me. And we keep on saying, shh, you can't have a voice because we need to impress someone else. And the moment we're allowing this little mini me to speak, he's going to pick up on all the other mini me's, and they're all going to grow together.
Your authenticity is the one thing that I've been working on so much for the last, I'd say, since 2021. It all started with a magic mushroom trip.
Yes.
And let me tell you, it completely changed my life. I advise every single person, if you don't want to go through, if you're completely unaware of your insecurities and you want to avoid the pain of life telling you that it's time to work on yourself, take magic mushrooms. I probably shouldn't say that on the show, but it completely changed my life. And I realized that it's almost like I realized in that moment when I was literally going through a 6-hour process that life is a mirror.
Yes.
And for a long time, I didn't understand that because it's a bumper sticker quote. Like if you think about it, like life is a mirror. Yeah, it's a mirror. Like what do? Your actions obviously create reality around you. I don't think we underestimate how true and impactful that actually is, because everything starts with you. If you really want to build, a career for yourself, create a career for yourself. If you want to become a professional athlete, if you want to help people around you, if you want to do philanthropy, if you want to start an NGO, whatever you're going to do, you're going to have to become a different version of yourself that can actually take that and make the most out of it. Because if you were that version of yourself, now you would already have that, if that makes sense.
Yep, for sure.
So you have to become a completely different version of yourself first, knowing that, cool, there's a journey of personal growth that needs to happen for me to become that version that can actually achieve the goal. And I think some of us almost like don't understand that, but it starts with you. Life is a reality. If you don't have what you want now, it's because you're the problem. And you have to change who you are in order to then get what you want.
Fact. And our biggest challenge what we have is that we think, and I'm going to use that word again, we think too much. You try to overthink everything. You want to say, what is expected from me? What would people want to hear from me? And I'm not saying as an entrepreneur, don't give people what they want, because that's why we're in business. We are giving people what they want so that they can do business with us and we can excel. But when we want to level up, we start overthinking it. And when we want to level up, we need to be grounded. Because the moment we level up, we're going to hit a few wobblies on our road. The moment I'm deciding, I want to be more this way. Or let's take a stupid example, and we hear it the whole time, is saying that, if you want to go to gym, it's going to be hard in the beginning. Now, if you go through to have that type of body or that type of look, I need to go through it. And then most people go back to the flow of the easier way out. And then we don't understand why it can't change. But that's what we have to understand. If I want to level up in my business as entrepreneur is not excelling. I'm not reaching the impact I want. It's like you said. Start going inward. Don't go outward. We tend to go and say, I need more advertising. I need more this. I need more people. It's not always the answer. The first answer is, what am I doing? Am I really in my way or not? And I have a lot of times, I say this in my rooms, get out of your own way. Because if you can get out of your own way, you will listen to yourself and your inner self. But whilst I'm pretending and whilst I'm being who I'm not and trying to impress everyone, I can't hear myself.
I have a quote that says, get out of your head and into your heart.
So true.
Because we live our lives in our head and there's just so much noise, because the noise levels in our head is basically determined by everything that's happened to you in hindsight. So all the good and bad stuff, but the bad stuff raises the noise levels a lot higher than it needs to be. And we start to overthink everything in life. So I'm someone who likes to believe that I'm quite logical. But I've come to the conclusion that that can also be a problem, because you start to overthink everything because you're looking for all the dots on the table.
Yep.
And how do I connect these dots in order to make the most logical decision, the best logical decision? And then your brain doesn't stop, because you're like, maybe there are dots, maybe I don't have enough dots yet. So then you go and do more research, more this and more this. Maybe there's something else I need. And you're just accumulating data.
Yeah.
And that also leads to some form of analysis paralysis. And then you find yourself spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, I see that happen all the time. And I used to make that mistake. It's like, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. Oh, I've read this article, we need to do this, we need to implement this. And that is just me listening to this big fat meat computer that doesn't always know what it's doing.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to put my ego aside, realize this thing doesn't know anything. And the more I actually listen to my gut and the excitement that comes through it and the authenticity of, this is what I feel is right, the more things started to happen naturally and beautifully, and just miracles on a daily basis happen. And I say miracles as definition of amazing stuff that you will not be able to plan on a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
So getting out of your head, how does one actually, it sounds easy to do, but it's really not.
No, it's not. It's actually very, very difficult. And like I said, in my case, it was until I was about 40. And I pick it up a lot with people between the ages of 35 to about 45, 50 years old, is that's the only time we've done all the tick list. I went to varsity, got my degree, got married, got kids, we've got a house, we've got successful, we've got the promotion, and the company's now okay. And then suddenly you go, well, I don't have another tick list. What now? And then we go and say, okay, well, what's wrong with me? And then we don't know because we're in our heads already.
And maybe we'll get divorced and get a sports car.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. Because we think if we get something else, it will change. I mean, I told you, my book originally was Finding Me Without Changing My Man. I wanted to trade him because I thought it's his fault because look where I am. And the moment you understand, to get out of your head, you need to take the blame stick and throw that away. The moment you throw the stick away and you realize there's only one person to blame, then you start taking ownership. And when you start taking ownership, you become very brutally honest. And when you become honest, you get into your heart.
Accountability.
Accountability.
Everything is your fault.
Yes.
I watched a video in 2019. It was a guy called Sam Ovens. And he was the first guy to make it big in the consulting space. And he had, it was a huge course. It was 2 hours a day for 8 weeks.
Wow.
Every day, Mondays to Fridays. So 10 hours a week for 8 weeks. That was the course. And the one video was, I can't remember the exact name, but it boiled down to everything is your fault. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. That is such an unfair statement to make. And my mindset was still at the external.
Yes.
How is this my fault?
Correct.
Like, if that person left, how's it my fault? If that person said that, how's that my fault? Now, that's probably the level of thinking of a lot of small business owners out there. How do you answer that question to them? Because that's probably what they're asking. Like, how everything can't be my fault. This is just impossible. How do we answer that?
Well, it's very simple. You need to understand, and I'm going to go back to it. Perception is projection. So if you perceive that the business is not doing well this year, believe it or not, every time you meet somebody, no matter how motivated you are that morning, your perception of this is a tough year, people are not going to do business with me. When you're going to interact with someone, you're going to give him a discount immediately before even doing the business because you've got this perception, it's a tough year. It's your fault. So the moment I perceive whatever's happening in my life, I'm going to project it. And where do perception comes from? From within. And that's where the accountability lies. So the moment you start changing that and you say, you know what? Is the economy my problem? Hell yes, it is. Because you're contributing. How am I contributing? Yeah, but not everybody's got money, etc. Well, then you have to change a product to make it a necessity product which will handle people.
Or change your audience.
Correct. Start diversifying and adjust. But because you've got blinkers on, you want to blame people. That's why I'm going bankrupt. That's why I'm not making money. That's why I'm not excelling. That's why I'm not doing that. That's an excuse. And if you start asking yourself the whole time, because people say, there is things to blame. Life happens. We don't have control, whether you like me, whether you can invite me again, etc. But I do have control over why I react and the way I present myself. So every time I go out there, I take every person I meet as a brand new opportunity and a miracle to grow within me. And what happens? I grow whenever I meet someone because my mindset is already in that perspective of what can we do next.
You're really looking for the little nuggets in the conversation.
Exactly. And that is why you're to blame. I'm to blame if I'm going to get into my concept, this bloody traffic in this world. What's going to happen? There's going to be 3 accidents and everything. Who projected it? I did. But if I go with that attitude, even if there is 3 accidents, I will automatically be open to alternative routes, etc., if I'm not taking the blame to someone else.
Yeah, I think that's a lot easier said than done. That's where the ego comes in as well. It's like accountability and the ego doesn't really go well together.
No, it doesn't. And the moment you know, and that's why I will keep on saying that, park the emotions, because the emotions are triggered by your past baggage. I.e., the teacher told you you'll never equate to something in the world. Your mother said, you always have ugly hands, don't speak with your hands. And so you can continue. So all those things contribute to ego to show people that I won't do that. And if you hear what I'm saying, the ego keeps on doing things that I would say, I won't do that. Life is not about what I don't do. Life is about everything, about what I do. So if I take the ego away, I don't do that. If I park the emotions, I don't get hyped up about anger and revenge, because that's ego. But the moment I'm grounded, and I say, you know what, let's take the ego away. Park it for 1 week. And I want to challenge everyone that's listening today. Don't do a 360-day turnaround today. All you have to do today is to say, you know what can I do, and take 1 point I'm not happy with myself. And just nudge that. And do that for 7 days. After 7 days, take another thing you didn't like about yourself and work on that one thing. And it's not easy because you're so used to your own pattern. But start making, even if you have to take your phone and put an alarm in there and say, remember not to speak fast today. Or remember to ask, how are you, before you just send a WhatsApp. In 7 days, it starts becoming more, okay, I remember that, and then add something to the equation. Before you know it, in a month's time, you've got 4 things you've elevated and grow. And that's what you need to do.
In 12 months, that becomes 48 things. You have a famous saying, and I really enjoyed it the first time I heard it. You said, offense is taken, not given. And again, while we're on the topic of the ego, when you said it, I was like, wow, I love that, because I think I resonate with that so much.
Yep.
Because you choose to get annoyed, you choose to get upset. There's a video I watched about a guy explaining anger, and he said, anger only lasts 15 seconds in the body.
Fact.
If you are angry after 15 seconds, your ego and your conscious mind is choosing to hold on to it.
Correct.
So maybe just explain to people what you meant with offense is taken and not given, because I think that beautifully connects with the ego, the conversation that we're having.
For sure, because what happens is we listen from how we feel and how we want things, and then we feel so offended when somebody doesn't invite us to a party. We feel so offended because somebody says, I'm not going to do business with your company right now. And our biggest challenge is, it's got nothing to do with us. That person, when he said it, didn't mean to offend you. He's just being blatantly honest with you. And in his mind or her mind, they are deciding and say, you know what, this doesn't work for me right now. I'm not convinced I see value enough. I don't feel comfortable enough. And that's all he's saying. Not once did they say, you the problem. They said, I cannot align myself with you. That's all they say. And so many times, and that's why I say rejection doesn't exist. It's just an opinion we don't like. Because what happens is, just as we take the offense, because we feel offended, how dare you speak like that to me? The ego is saying, I'm putting myself on a pedestal. We don't talk to people like me. You know who I am. Then this offense is taken. But the moment I take the ego away and I try to understand where you come from, now I open channels to communicate. And now the picture changes. I don't get angry. I cannot be offended. And people go, yeah, but maybe you just don't have emotions. I do. I mean, it's like you say, 15 seconds of anger. I get, when people say something I don't like, I get angry immediately. And then I hold on. Why are they saying it? It's got nothing to do with me, so why do I want to get angry about it? I mean, how many times we talk about it? The taxis, they bumped in front of us, and this country, this poor country gets the mistake for the taxis. No, his core values is time is money.
Yes.
So he's just doing his job cutting in front of you to get there faster. He doesn't feel about you because you're not paying his bills.
It's got nothing to do with you.
It's got nothing to do with you. But we want to take that offense.
Yeah, we want to take the offense because it's almost like we sit in the car going, oh, he saw my car, he saw my gap, and he's trying to ruin my day. Meanwhile, he didn't even think about you.
He didn't think about me.
Yeah, and then we get upset because he didn't think about, how did he not think about me?
Correct. They don't even care about this world. But they do. They care about the passengers to get them as fast as possible because the moment his taxi is empty again, he's going to make more money. Yeah. And we don't think that way. We think, I'm driving this type of car. Do you mind in front of my car?
Yeah.
He didn't even think about it. He's got so much problems in his life that you're the least of his problems. As a matter of fact, he takes offense because you cannot see his world. And again, ego, groundedness, EQ.
EQ is a big one. I think it's been surfacing for the last 10 years. I think the last decade, I think people have become a lot more aware of what EQ actually means and how powerful it is. I think there was a study that showed high IQ doesn't mean that you will be successful. And, the old traditional way of teaching our kids is like, well, the smarter you are, the more successful you'll be. And sometimes the more smart you are, or the more smart you are. Now I sound like very little smart. No, I'm joking. But the smarter you are, essentially, it becomes a problem because this logical brain that's processing all the dots on the table and trying to connect the puzzle pieces or whatnot is now you so proud of your smart brain that you're now creating all this unnecessary noise because you've given the brain the task to figure out a solution. If the brain is not going to figure that solution out, you're going to feel ego pain because now you're not living up to the expectation of being smart like your mom and dad said you were, that your teacher said you were. So it's funny, it's like when you can get rid of all labels, and I think that's the one of the things that I've started doing in my life. Is like whatever labels people want to give me, that's fine. There's obviously ones that I enjoy and ones that I enjoy less, but it doesn't really affect my day, and it doesn't really affect anything else except for those 10 seconds you go, well, that's not really a true reflection of who I believe I am and people around me believe I am. So it's not lacquer to know that someone might perceive me that way. But at the same time, you let it go and you move on because you realize it's nothing to do with you. It's everything got to do with them.
And that's the biggest challenge as an entrepreneur is to say, what do I take and to move forward? And I always had this one tip for entrepreneurs. If it doesn't serve me, let it go. So if somebody says to me, I'm not going to do business with you right now. Yes, maybe you were so desperate for that 100,000 Rand or 1,000 Rand deal today and you're not getting it. And now it's going to ruin your whole day. Park the ego, park the emotions and understand it's not personal and focus on the next step. It's going to move you forward in your business.
I think I've really enjoyed this conversation thoroughly, and I would love to. I think we're going to get a lot of questions from it, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of business owners that will resonate with what we discussed today. And I think in rounding off, for those listening, there might be people sitting there going, okay, cool, where can I start? How do I start? We kind of touched on it, but in summary, can you maybe give some practical tips on really how to start doing an audit on yourself and move in the right direction? How do you get that 1% better every single day?
Well, first of all, again, go park the emotions. For me, I cannot stress that enough. When you go and start doing your audit, go park your emotions because our emotions blur the lines. I mean, the moment I feel offended, I'm hurt, I'm going from a point of desperation, I cannot do a clear audit. So I need to park my emotions and say, what's the facts? And then you must be very, very careful. When you do look at the facts, make sure it's not that little girl that's insecure who was told by a teacher or a parent they're not good enough. Make sure you're talking from a point of view of this adult that achieved so much. So look at your pattern and say, I've achieved so much. Let's park the emotions, park the ego. What do I see? I see hard worker, loving, caring, a supportive person, trying to do the best I can. And then you go and say, well, what am I missing? Why do I not believe it? Why do I not walk that talk? Then we change it and look at the things that holds me back. I feel insecure because I don't think my husband likes me. I don't do so well because I'm waiting for someone, because I've lost my business in the past. Maybe I'm going to lose this business again. Those are gremlins. Start looking at it really and say, what's the truth? Be very truthful about those blurred lines, if I can call it that. You have to be very brutally honest with that. And if you battle with that, ask one of your closest confidants, or phone a coach like me. Ask me to be that soundboard for you. Because the moment we have that soundboard with somebody we trust, we can listen to it. We don't have to take it by heart, but we can listen to it and have a clearer view of who we are. And then we can start applying what is the truth. And then we become more grounded.
Yeah, geez, thanks. I enjoyed this. Thank you. I think more people need to hear this kind of conversations, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. It was great to have this conversation.
Yeah, man. So where would people get in touch with you? The easiest way, where are you the most reactive and responsive?
Well, I'm on all the social medias. I'm on lizettevolkwyn.com, my website. So from there, you can literally go to all my social medias. You can follow me on Instagram, which is Lizette_Volkwyn. And then you can WhatsApp me. I'm a WhatsApp away, which is 072-431-2023.
Amazing. Lizette, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And I believe actually that there was a lot of value to those listening. So thanks once again.
My pleasure.
All right. Cheers, guys.